In this lesson, we will take a look at another approach that Spring Security provides that allows us to protect our service layer. So we're going to take a look at how we can use the post-authorize annotation to restrict the invocation of our methods on our controllers. The post-authorize annotation is going to function very similarly to the pre-authorize annotation. It's going to allow us to specify some expression that then is used to determine whether or not we authorize the invocation of a method on our service layer. So there have been two changes made to our application in order to support this lesson. The first is we have added a method to our appointment repository, and that method's name is findByUser. It accepts an auto user argument, and it returns a list of appointments. So here we're just using Spring data to query our database for where the appointment is equal to some user. This repository method is invoked within our appointment controller when we attempt to get all of our appointments. So instead of simply returning all appointments, we now dependency inject the authentication object into the getAppointments method, and we retrieve the principal and pass that principal into the findByUser method on the appointment repository. So let's take a look at what this does for us. I'm just going to log in as John Doe, so that's the Joe Doe user. And the password's password. And now we see when he logs in, he only gets his appointments in the appointments list, instead of also seeing the Kevin Bowersox appointment that we have seen throughout the course. He is restricted to his own appointments, and he can drill down into that appointment and see the details. Now, let's pretend that John Doe is a slightly malicious user, and he notices our RESTful URL, and he has a hunch that's an ID. So he swaps the ID to 1, and now he can access the Kevin Bowersox appointment and see all the details. We're going to learn how to use the post-authorize annotation and defense in depth in order to prevent this type of attack. So we'll navigate back to our appointment controller, and if we scroll down to the getAppointment method on this controller, this is the method responsible for retrieving an appointment when we click on that link within our list. So we're going to make some modifications to this method that will allow us to authorize the invocation of this method. The way we're going to do that is we're going to use the post-authorize annotation. So we'll put that in place and import it. And what's unique about the post-authorize annotation is that it is evaluated after the method is invoked. And that's the difference between pre-authorize and post-authorize. Pre-authorize is evaluated prior to the method being invoked, while post-authorize is evaluated afterwards. And that allows us to perform some unique type of logic because we can look at the returned object from the method, and we can also access some of our arguments that are passed into this method. So we need to provide an expression that should be evaluated to make the authorization decision. And we're going to grab the principal object, and we will check the auto user ID field to see if it is equal to the appointment that we are putting on our model. So we're adding the appointment we find from this repository to the model, and then that appointment has its own fields, one being the user and that having its own auto user ID. Now, the way we are allowed to access this model is by using the Spring expression language. We simply prefix the name of one of our arguments, in this case model, with a £, and then we can refer to that method argument within our expression. Remember that the model is a map, so we can grab one of the values on the map by specifying the appointment key, And then from there, we can access the user field. And on the user field, we have the auto user ID field. And that's going to allow us to ensure that the principal is requesting an appointment that belongs to them. So let's run through this demonstration. I will restart our server, and then I'm going to navigate back to our application, and I'm going to log out. Once the application logs us out, we will sign back in with John Doe. So we use the Joe Doe user and the password of password. And now we're going to navigate into his record, and we're going to attempt the attack again. And there we see access is denied, and that's exactly what we want to happen. So for our final demonstration, we're going to show how we can inspect the returned object by the method and use that return object in order to make our authorization decision. So I'm just going to change our expression to use the return object, and I'm going to check that it is equal to the string appointment. So it's fairly obvious here that this is going to evaluate to true. Normally you have a little bit more of a complex situation, but I'm just trying to demonstrate that we can use the return object within our expression. So I'm going to restart our server now, and then we will navigate back to our application. And once the server has restarted, we will then log in with our Joe Doe user for John Doe. So let's log out. We'll come back in as Joe Doe, password of password. And now we're going to run that same little attack over again. This time it permits it. And the reason it permits it is because very simply when it compares our return object, which is obviously appointment, to the string appointment, it evaluates to true. So you may have a little bit more complex logic there when you actually work through this example. So this concludes our lesson on the post-authorize annotation and how we can use this annotation to require authorization in order to invoke methods on our service layer.